let's move on to Group B. Lots to discuss here. Should we start with England? Not sure. 2 Englishmen in the chat here with me.
Nah, let's do England last. Let's start with the Yanks. Let's go
All
USA.
Right. Let's start with the US. Obviously, Nigel, living in the United States of America for a while, you've fallen in love with the US national team and Greg Berhalter, currently ranked 19th in the FIFA World Rankings. Key players, obviously, we recognize how dangerous they could possibly be. Sorry, 14th they are in the FIFA rankings. They have Christian Pulisic, they've got Gio Reyna, they've got Weston McKennie, they've got players playing in big nations. They are a team that you have to be worried about. Can they top the group? Do they have any chance of topping the group? Can they get second? Can they get out of the group? That would be the question.
No. Listen, Ian, I'm going to be very honest. I think for me, again, I like USA. They've got talent, like you said. A lot more younger players are playing in Europe. Some of them are playing in Europe. Some of them are not. The captain, fantastic, hasn't really been playing regularly at Chelsea. This is a World Cup. You have to go on form because you're going straight into it, ladies and gentlemen. There's no time to get fit. There's no time for friendlies. You're going straight into a World Cup. And the reality of it is this. There's going to be a lot of injuries happening in the first 2 or 3 games of this World Cup, just because you're in that winter period anyway, when players start to get injured more if they're playing domestic football anyway. So for me, your main star man, Christian Pulisic, hasn't been playing. That's a big worry. I saw the performances like yourself did against Japan and also Saudi Arabia, and it wasn't great or very convincing for me. I think Greg's gone very young, which isn't a problem, but I always say to you, Ian, whenever a manager comes in and starts saying they want to go young and want to go youthful, I have questions about that manager. That means that you can't handle senior players who might not buy into your philosophy or who you might feel might be disruptive if you want to go young. And when you want to go young and then you're seeing the results, the performances, there's not one American fan that can tell me that they were happy with the performance they saw against Japan or South Korea. Or Saudi Arabia, your last 2 performances before you go into a World Cup. Yep. And then now when you've done that and eliminated a lot of the senior players or more experienced players, it's hard to bring them back in to buy into it. You always have to have a balance. All the best teams we see in world football have a balance of experience and youth. I just feel for me that USA right now are just not in a great shape where they can really do anything. I think Wales are heavily underrated, and Wales have been doing fantastically well for the squad and players that they have. We saw what Gareth Bale did in obviously the MLS Cup final, what he's capable of with the experience. And then I think for me, you look at England's squad, obviously we're going to get into it, but I'm just think for me, this America squad for me is just not a right place right now.
I think as well, my main takeaway from going through the American squad as it was dropping, Nigel and I did that last week, was the real kind of lack of firepower. I mean, with the exception of Pulisic and Jordan Morris, in terms of the attack, in fact, in terms of anyone in the squad, I don't think anyone else has got even in double figures. You've got some, very interesting omissions. I mean, I know that he wasn't a staple in the team, and he's only sort of come onto the international scene now. But PFOC, you kind of think that, given the way that he's performed so far in the season with Union Berlin, might have been a useful call-up. You've got the likes of Pepe as well, who, yes, despite the fact that he hasn't had an easy introduction to life in European football, suddenly is starting to find the back of the net in the Netherlands as well. To me, I think, again, there is a bit like Mane with Senegal. There is a lot of expectation and pressure on the likes of Pulisic, because I don't see otherwise where there is that real kind of quality cutting edge in front of goal. And I wouldn't call Pulisic a reliable source of goals either. So for me, I think, for the USA to really have a chance to get out of the group, there needs to be more of a consistent goal threat. And I think that opening test against Wales is going to be a very, very good indicator to see where this group is at, because as you guys have both alluded to, the recent form shown at international level just hasn't been convincing enough.
Nigel, just so lively in our personal chat. I appreciate your conversation.
No, Ian, but he's right. He's right, because I didn't pay attention to that, and he's 100% right. You know it, Ian, as well. When you see a World Cup, one of the most important things you need in a World Cup is a clinical goal scorer. You need to have a striker that's going to be clinical, because you're not going to get a lot of chances. And when you don't be clinical, you will be punished. And JJ, mate, he's very, very right.
My concern about this roster is defense. It's not about what's happening offensively. I think that they create a lot of chances to US and they could be dangerous going forward. But I think the centre back situation for me and lack of World Cup experience in this group, obviously missing out in 2018. This is a young group, as you both point out. That's where my main concern is. And then you have the goalkeeping issue as well on top of that. They know Zach Steffen will bring in Matt Turner, who's had 4 or 5 caps. Then you've got Sean Johnson coming in, obviously for Major League Soccer, coming to the end of his probably international career. Great to see him a part of it. But defensively is my main concern for Greg, and obviously being a defender himself, he was an absolute wild man. So I really hope that they do well, the USA. They do have my full support. Obviously, I am an American. Don't be fooled by the accent. And I'm incredibly excited about how well they do. Let's talk about Wales very quickly. Obviously, they're in the group competing with the USA and Iran for that second spot. Wales do have a tremendous player in Gareth Bale. I don't know how fit he is. Obviously scored a great goal in the MLS Cup final, but they've also got good experience. But is that experience and quality good enough to get Wales out of this group? Do they have a chance, JJ?
I do think they have a chance. I mean, you look at some of the other players as well, because the temptation when you talk about Wales is just to focus on Gareth Bale. And yes, we know that he's their captain, fantastic, and is by far and away, the most talented player in their squad. Yet they still have, some very, familiar cornerstones to this group. I think that the manager has done really well since coming in the wake of the scandal with Ryan Giggs. And I think that this squad is, it is exactly that. It's a united group of players. There are some, with better quality than we perhaps sometimes give them credit for. Let's not forget as well, Aaron Ramsey, in terms of the experience he brings. I know he's quite fragile on the pitch these days, but he's definitely somebody who has an appetite for these kind of games at this sort of level. I've been quietly impressed with Joe Rodon so far this season with Rennes. It's quite rare for me to see a British player come over to France, so to see him up close regularly, has been quite interesting. And I think that Wales, in terms of the continuity that they've had in international tournaments now for sort of the last couple of editions, I think that they're a solid bet to be really competitive in terms of finishing second. My expectation is that England will finish top of the group, but I think that Wales do stand, a very good chance of coming out in one of those top 2 positions. And I think when you look through that squad, there's a couple of players who, are now past that 100 cap mark, and having that kind of experience, even if those players aren't on the pitch every game, I think that is really important to get them through, especially as we've already talked about the inexperience or the relative lack of experience of the USMNT.
Tournament experience, like JJ said, great management, know what they're doing. Not just about Gareth Bale. You've got Harry Wilson, Daniel James. You've got some real good gems and talent in Wales. I'm telling you, people need
Brennan
to really
Johnson
keep an eye on Wales. Wales is a really well-coached, well-organized team. And that's why I feel that they will probably do a lot better than people expect. They've got great tournament experience recently, and they've really got a great nucleus. That's all I have to say.
Also incredibly patriotic. I think people forget that about Wales. When they get to big tournaments, they are well supported. They're also very passionate. The locker room, the chemistry, the way they push themselves, don't necessarily need to listen to their ranking in FIFA at all. I think that this Welsh team are well coached. As you mentioned, Robert Page has done a great job considering how much of a mess it was in the coaching ranks with Ryan Giggs, and now the situation's been taken care of. Page deserves a lot of credit for getting this Welsh team to the World Cup, and they will absolutely go there and enjoy it. They'll enjoy every single minute of it. So I worry about Wales, and I also worry about Iran. Iran are a team that nobody is talking about right now. Iran are a team that are pretty much close to home. Let's not forget this is taking place in Qatar, so they're going to be well supported, Iran, and certainly feeling a bit more at home. And they have some talented players playing in some big leagues, and not many people are talking about Iran right now, JJ. Should they be talking more about him?
I mean, I think a lot of people are talking about Iran, but they're not talking about Iran from a footballing perspective. They're talking about what's going on in the country, which is obviously, quite concerning, from a worldwide point of view. But also, it creates, a kind of strange environment for Iran to go into this, this World Cup. And there's been a lot of sort of speculation and a bit of confusion about, players that Iran will actually call up or might not call up because of the political situation, but fingers crossed, they can get out on the pitch, and those players, can show what they're capable of doing. And I think Iran are one of those teams who, when you look at some of those individuals, there are, some quite high talented, individuals there. You've got the likes of Sardar Azmoun, Bayer Leverkusen, somebody who's been on the scene in Europe now for a while. Taremi, who's doing really well in Europe with Porto at the moment. So, I do think that they're one of those teams where, because of this over focus on what's been going on in a non-footballing aspect, people might actually be surprised when they get out onto the pitch and start kicking the ball around and they can actually play.
Nigel.
I'm with JJ. I think Iran are always a surprise entity. They've got some great talent. They really do. But I don't know how easy it will be for them, because this is not a normal World Cup. And like you said, there's a lot of attention being paid to what's going on back home. I feel that's going to play a part in this World Cup. I think there's going to be a lot of, let's just say, politics in this World Cup, not just everything about the World Cup. So, but they are a talented team. They do always produce, like, they're not going to be an easy team to beat. They're going to be very hard to beat, but I still see England and Wales being able to get the job done.
Iran can score goals. If you look at the squad and the roster that was selected from Iran, there's goals in amongst their ranks there. JJ rattled off a few names for you, but if you go and look at the goals they've scored for the national team, they're a team you have to be worried about. Obviously, we know what the coach is. He's been around for such a long time, Queiroz. We recognize him and we understand what's going on back home, but also don't forget that is what can bring a group of players together. So watch out for Iran causing an upset, because right now absolutely nobody is talking about them. And one of the reasons why is because England are in the group. England are favourites to get out of the group. England are favourites to go far in this competition. First game is against Iran for England. Squad selection was obviously a headache for Gareth Southgate. So many people have a comment to say, Nigel, about the England squad and the squad that was selected. Is this squad good enough to potentially win the World Cup?
It's a good squad. I don't know, I'd say good enough to win it, because when I look at the squad, you got to look at the other nations and other squads that they've put in there. And I think England have a good squad. I think Gareth Southgate's basically opened himself for criticism. Depends on how far England goes, because there's some selection that's very difficult to palate in this current climate. Big fan of, oh my God, Carl Walker. He's my mate. I played with him as well. But he's gone into the squad with
Must
Calvin
be a good mate.
Yeah, it's my mate. Good mate. They've gone into the squad without really playing. Harry Maguire doesn't play. So there's a lot of questions. Some people question whether Marcus Rashford really deserves to be in there. Callum Wilson's just been called up on great form at Newcastle, but again, can get injured. And you look at the likes of Ivan Toney not being able to go. I personally feel that, look at Matt always. I also feel that for me, when I look at Harry Kane, and I said this in our private group chat, Ian, Harry Kane looks tired. And he will play for England, but he looks tired. In the bigger picture of things, he looks absolutely exhausted. So I would say, again, this is about how far England get. And then after that, it's going to be the criticism because of the squad that Gareth Southgate picked that he's going to have to deal with. But I look at other squads that I just feel are just too stronger than England.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think something as well that's quite interesting when I look at it, and sort of moving away from looking at the individuals and looking at the collective as a whole. This is something that we'd normally associate with the likes of Germany in the past, but England actually have a really, really high concentration of players that play in the same league. 25 out of 26 players, I believe, with Jude Bellingham being the only exception. And
Go on, Jude.
I've always thought that really contributes towards the solidarity within the group. When you play in the same league, each other's strengths and weaknesses. That can always contribute towards the chemistry, the understanding being a lot stronger. Nigel's disagreeing with me here.
I disagree.
I think the fact that this group has been together, or the crux of this group has been together now for quite some time under the same manager, on paper, it should, match up quite well and be conducive to another deep run, potentially even a shot at the title. I just kind of feel like that moment, that real opportunity for England, to get themselves international silverware, the best opportunity came on home soil in the Euros. And I'm not sure that they will be able to replicate it here, because there are some of those mitigating factors, as Nigel said, with the fatigue of the likes of Kane. So no, it is going to be really, really interesting. But for me, I think England have to win this group. No, they can't assume that they've won it before they even step out on the pitch, but they definitely have the squad that's capable of winning this group.
JJ, I actually have England getting through and facing off against France in the quarterfinals. I don't know how you've put your bracket, but is that a possibility you can see? And are they good enough to beat France? Obviously, knowing the French team so well.
I do think that they're good enough. I do think that they're good enough to beat France, but France as well,
JJ.
are good enough to be able to beat England. It's what?
Did you just say you think they're good enough to beat France?
Yeah, I do, because I don't think France are going to be.
Defensively, England are super vulnerable.
Yeah, but
and
I
France's
mean,
greatest strength is the attacking sense.
Yeah,
I can't see that.
But we don't know what France's midfield is going to look like yet, because they've had Pogba, they've had Conte ripped out of it. So until they actually get out there on the pitch and show us, what they can do.
Chouamini, you want me to pronounce it again so you can have a laugh and a joke?
We all know what he's
Chouamini.
we all know what he's capable of, but we don't actually know what France are going to look like in terms of a team until they get out. I mean, you look at some of the changes that were forced upon Deschamps earlier today. Kimpembe out. Suddenly you've got Disasi coming in. You've got Marcus Thuram getting a late call up. So in terms of France specifically, and that's another chat for another day, there are, quite a lot of question marks. So in terms of the squads on paper, yeah, England could beat France, but France could beat England as well. There's a lot of talent in both of those sides.